you the latest game coverage from 4 to 10 years ago. You're listening to Techies Talking Tech Tonight. I'm your host, Trey Comstock. With me this week, as ever, is Jimmy Principe.
Hello, Internet.
It is Monday / early Tuesday.
It's still Monday here.
August 25th. And this is Techies Talking Tech Tonight, colloquially known as T4, the show where we kind of go on and on about things, which is only slightly different from our other show, where we also just sort of go on and on about things. This is the.
But that one's more current.
This one's more kind of whatever. So this week, it's been a while since we've done this. We've been really oddly device-focused for months. And so we're going to kind of bring it back to talking about gaming. And of course, this is kind of the doldrums of summer. Whereas there's no longer really a winter doldrums, there's just like constantly games coming out. There's definitely a summer doldrums, and we're going in. Usually, Madden, which comes out this week, marks the beginning.
Comes out tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, it comes out tomorrow, which usually marks the beginning of new games. And so now we're going to start moving into the season where, Fast and Furious, where it's Madden, and then Sims 4, and then Destiny, and then all of the Assassin's Creeds, and Drive Club, and The Crew, and Call of Duty, and Far Cry 4, and there's the slew of fall games are coming, but they're not here yet. So this is, at least for me, a wonderful time to sit back and play games of 2 to 4 years ago, which is most of what I've been doing. But Jimmy, you've been casting slightly further afield.
Yeah, so an interesting thing happened this week. So I have you can't quite see it over my
it's
shoulder.
An orange
here.
smudge.
I have a slight orange smudge right about there. That is a N64. It's the orange N64. Of course, I have the orange controller to go with it because that's only right. And I've had a number of games for it. It's kind of sat idly, but the last game that I had in it was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3.
Yes.
The best Tony Hawk game ever.
They at that point they hadn't gotten totally bored with doing them, but they'd worked out a lot of the kinks.
I would argue that's the one I spent the most time playing on the original one. Originally, I was playing an N64 because it was the console. Yeah. So I just happened to have it, and I had people over, and he walked in and he looked. And he goes, "Is that Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3?" It's like, yes. He's like, "Can I play it?" Well, of course.
Yeah, so it's a video game. Yes.
We've just been we're gonna watch the movie or play the PS4, the newer game system that I have 3 controllers for. I only have 2 controllers for the N64.
Although it had 4 slots, which didn't require multi-tap. It was revolutionary.
Yeah, no, it has 4 slots for the controllers, but I only have 2 controllers for it. So we played Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 for 3 hours. And when you consider the fact that each of the rounds is 2 minutes long, that's a lot of rounds of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4.
I don't remember that one having crazy load times. You're actually getting in a fair amount of game.
Quick.
Well, it's cartridge based. It's one of those things with cartridge based, so you're not loading it off of an optical disc, which is still a relatively slow process. And so it was almost basically like inserting a hard drive into the game system, and you have a direct bus in. It's amazing what it'll do.
It's actually, it's more like inserting a memory card.
Yeah, it's hardwired. It's remarkable.
Okay, so I did discover one thing. The Rumble Pack that you gave me does not work.
Interesting. Does it need new batteries?
No, the batteries are new. Maybe I'll swap out the batteries and see if that fixes it.
Swap out the batteries.
Because it didn't have batteries when I got it. So I put batteries in it. But I don't remember how long ago that was.
Sometimes they have an on-off switch that's hidden, if I remember correctly.
It may have just drained the battery. I don't know. The other fascinating thing is that I'd forgotten about the N64 is that it asks you when you say save, it's like your memory card. Where is the memory card? Put the memory card. Take out the Rumble Pack and put the memory card.
Yeah.
Which I never had a Rumble Pack, so I never got that message where it instructed me take the Rumble Pack out and put in the memory card.
I have vague memories of them coming out later in the life of the N64 of an integrated memory card and Rumble Pack unit.
That's a better decision.
No, what it was a better decision was the original Xbox did, which is you had 2 slots. That's the Or the Dreamcast, where you had the VMU, which I loved. Of course, it's me. It comes back to always that era. It comes back to the Dreamcast.
It always comes back to the Dreamcast, doesn't
because Dreamcast for me marks like a line in the sand. The Dreamcast is the best that the N64 PS1 generation could have been. Obviously, It came out much later. But that's like the peak of that technology. And from PS2 forward, I think of as modern gaming, with Dreamcast standing on the line. So Dreamcast had some of the features that we expect in modern gaming that would have been unthinkable in a stock N64. I know they came out with an N64 modem later, but that really only came out in Japan, and that was really weird. But it had an onboard modem. It had a Windows-derived operating system. Obviously, it played CDs and all of that.
Right.
It had a second screen in the VMU. Sure, it was a really crappy second screen, but it had a second screen. It had a lot of these things that we still see in modern gaming, so I view it as standing on a line. That everything before that is kind of still in that mindset of the early 90s and 1980s, and just improving upon it. Obviously, PS1 and a few other systems moved to discs, but even still, they weren't thinking in terms of like an integrated experience. Whereas with the Dreamcast, it's beginning of the integrated experience that then really takes off with the PS2 on forward.
Right, and I think that's one of the reasons why the N64, especially because like for my generation, is very much that is what we played. It was the N64.
Yeah, because you were in... let me think about this, because you're the same age as my brother.
Yeah, me and Drew are the same age.
Yeah, so that means, let's see, it launched in 96? 96? Something like that. Right. PS1 in 95 and N64 in 96.
You want me to fact check you?
Yeah, fact check me, because I'm doing this solely from memory. I bought one in 97, but that I know it had already been out for a little while by then. And I was in Europe. But I'm pretty sure it's played.
Yeah, it was released June 23rd, 1996.
Hey, who'da man? Okay. So, I mean, you guys were...
Japan and September 1996 in North America.
Yep. Okay. And you guys were, what, 96? Y'all are 89, so y'all were 9 years old? Something like that?
The math does not work.
No, you all were 7 years old. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm thinking. I was about to turn 10. So I had just turned 10 when it came out, and y'all were... 6 or 7 years old when this thing launched.
Right, but so then the PS2 didn't come out until 2002.
No, 2000. 2000?
I thought it was 2001.
2001's Xbox.
Oh, okay.
Because, oddly enough, the original Xbox launched only slightly after 9/11. Don't ask me, but the original Xbox was brand new when I was prepping for driver's ed. And I prepped for driver's ed to start it in 2002. Yeah, my freshman year of high school. So I played a lot of Project Gotham, the original Project Gotham, to get ready for driver's ed. So I did it from the first person perspective, and that was how I would get psyched up for my driver's ed lessons. These are just really deep rooted memories that I have. So that was 2001, and so PS2 was 2000, and the Dreamcast was when I was in 7th grade, so that would have been 1999.
Yeah, and I mean, PS2 was the first console that we owned. We got our first PS2. We got our PS2 in, I guess, Christmas 2001. I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah, so that would have been. I mean,
that's when we got the PS2.
That's in some ways that was when they were readily available.
Right, and I think that's right. But anyway, so like the N64 of my that's really the first gaming console I remember playing. Of course, I played NES and SNES and things like that people had, but the N64 is really the one for me. But I thought it was really interesting, the fact that here I have this the PlayStation 4, I have more controllers for it. In fact, I had the number of controllers as we had people. FIFA 14 was loaded into it from playing earlier in the day. Yes.
Sorry, it's a beautiful intro.
It's
football, the game we love, the game we live for. We are FIFA 14. Sorry, Patrick Stewart, for those of you who don't know, Patrick Stewart does the intro movie for FIFA 14, and it is amazing because, like everything else Patrick Stewart does, he really goes for it. So it's this wonderfully narrated thing about a football video game. We are FIFA 14.
You just kind of have to zone out about the fact that it's about a video game, and you will get so pumped.
New stadiums will rock. Like, yes. I almost bought, honestly, they put that on YouTube before the game came out, and I watched it unsuspecting. I almost then went and bought FIFA 14. And I was halfway through the process of buying FIFA 14 before I stopped myself and went, I'm not going to play this. Why am I, if I think FIFA's a great franchise, I'm not into soccer enough to really get any benefit out of that game. Because, I run around and kick the ball. Great. I love watching soccer, and I think FIFA is one of the most successful sports franchises in actually not falling into the Madden thing of just being the same game over and over again. Anyways, this is not a scree against.
They're supposed to make changes. The one this year I think I'm going to be interested in is they're claiming that they're making changes to how the goalkeeper works in the game, and so. In the past, the goalkeeper has kind of been it's not really hard to fake out the goalkeeper.
Sure.
Compared to other. So this past year, they made a large change in kind of the dynamics of how of build-up play and things like that, making it feel more realistic and making it more seamless, especially on next gen. Yeah. Making it so that they run off the screen, they grab the ball for a throw in, so it's very seamless.
Yeah.
And so just kind of continuing that, making it feel more and more and more like you're actually playing a game of soccer the whole time.
Well,
so it's really interesting, and I really like FIFA.
Well, and they certainly make FIFA is a franchise that spans the globe. And what I mean by this is maybe even still, but certainly up until very recently, they released the annual updates of FIFA for the PlayStation 2. Because in the developing world, where FIFA is huge, most places only have PS2s. And it's most of the only thing people can afford. And so I would go to all of these kind of arcades. So basically it's people who own televisions and bootleg consoles, and they're playing the latest version of FIFA on a PlayStation 2.
Let's see, FIFA Soccer 14, it appears, is available for PS2.
Okay, yeah, I knew 14 was. I don't know if 15.
What, PAL?
Yeah, it would be PAL. Because it's an SD console, so those kind of things matter.
Yeah, no.
They're funny about that, huh?
Yeah, funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I thought it was really interesting that we played 3 hours of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 on the N64 when we could have played FIFA.
But I think some of this is, in some cases, good gameplay is just good gameplay. Regardless, and some games just don't age well, right? Where they're just modern, really old shooters, games. Certainly pre-Doom.
Oh my gosh, no! I have GoldenEye. GoldenEye is horrible.
Right, I mean, a lot of these
way worse than I thought it was.
A lot of, especially first-person shooters, where there's been a lot of innovation in it, don't age particularly well, and driving games don't necessarily age real well because they're so graphic dependent. But for a game like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, where what it's reliant on is gameplay. It's the same thing with Rock Band, really. Rock Band came out a fairly long time ago in gaming kind of timelines anyways. Yet it's still wonderful to play because what it's reliant on is gameplay. And a lot of what the indie game movement, as such as it is, as annoyed as I get with it fairly often, is a return to, they don't have the money for the hardcore, for the graphics, right? So what they rely on is the same thing that Nintendo relies on, which is art style and gameplay. And really, we don't necessarily want graphics powerhouse. What we want are beautiful games that play well.
Right, and you were telling me about, what is it, Sports Friends
whatever? So also within the indie game movement now, we've talked about this before, there is a move back to what gets called couch co-op, which is, or couch multiplayer. So not online multiplayer, but like we used to do growing up, or like you were doing with Tony Hawk, where you sit on a couch and play video games with your friends who are also there in person. And so Sports Friends is a game that came out relatively recently for PS4.
It's $15.
$15 that wraps together 4 indie games. What is it? Bari Bari Ball, Pole Riders.
What do you want me to tell you?
Hokra,
Bari Bari Ball, Super Pole Riders,
Hokra, and Johann
Sebastian
Joust, which you do need a move controller for that one.
Unfortunately.
And so it's just a bunch of games really fun, simple games that are very competitive that you can play with your friends. GiantBomb.com, which is a gaming website that we talk about a lot because I spend a lot of time watching it, dedicates usually a portion of their Friday live show to playing these kind of games. There's a hilarious one that's recently come out on Steam called Mount Your Friends, where it's mostly naked avatars with swinging penises covered by loincloths, and you have to like climb over and build a tower of humanity on top of this goat. It's hilarious, and because the controls are deliberately kind of awkward. There's a game called Gang Beast, which I don't think is actually out yet, but is in the process of. Oh, it just got picked up by Double Fine. Double Fine's going to publish it,
okay.
But it's not out yet. And that's where you're basically these kind of really hulking, awkwardly moving characters in kind of a Smash Brothers style battle. But with kind of deliberately difficult controls to just make it a little more hilarious. So this is something that's really been, the indie space has really been working on, and to be honest, Nintendo has been working on, rather than the AAA developers for what I think was the modern consoles, but the non-Nintendo consoles.
Well, I mean, you talk about like BioShock Infinite was what? A $200 million game to produce?
Something like that, too. Yeah, it was several.
Because it was supposed to be 100 million.
Yeah, and it went over.
Went over budget.
Yeah.
It was an amazing and beautiful game, and the graphics in that game are astounding.
Yeah, no, I mean, that
but
that and The Last of Us really show what the previous generation was actually capable of when you dedicated way too much time to something.
Exactly.
Because both of those were multiple years in development. This was not Call of Duty rev it every 2 years kind of thing. This was like, both, now the now defunct studio that made BioShock and the still very active studio, Naughty Dog, that made Last of Us, really take their time with games. And it shows because they get the most out of whatever system they're on.
Oh, yeah. And they usually have very good story aspect of it as well. And so they make very good games, but that's not the space that the indie gamers need to be trying to play in because they don't have the budgets.
They don't have the budgets because what costs are the graphics. Honestly,
it costs stupid money.
I mean, they are paying certainly their story talent, folks like Ken Levine. They're paying them some amount of money, but writing doesn't require a huge team of people in the thousands, right? There was something like 1,000 people working on Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. 1,000 people. That's a crazy number, and a lot of that had to do with game size and graphics. In direct correlation between those two things, right? You make a huge game with elaborate graphics, good lord, that's going to take a while.
Oh, yeah, and the render time in and of itself is also going to take a while.
And that's what's so interesting about the indie game that's coming in 2015, No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky is going to have something like a quadrillion number of planets that you can visit.
That's the one where it like kind of grows on its own, right?
Yeah, so they've actually built an AI, essentially an AI, to generate these planets. And then there's another AI that goes through and captures GIFs of all of these planets so that they can look at them in the big picture. But it's a very small team, less than 10 people, making this fully 3D, not like super graphical. I mean, it's relying more on art style than raw polygons. But
still,
it's a beautiful full 3D game with like a quadrillion planets being made by a team of 10 people because they've automated. It's a procedurally generated world. So stuff like that's really interesting, where the indie space is able to leverage, quite honestly, wacky technology. This kind of procedural generation, like Minecraft, like things in that space, but to do it to the furthest degree anyone's taken it before. I mean, they're taking cutting edge like research and integrating it into video games, honestly, in the same way that John Carmack did in the early days at id. I mean, what he was doing is he was studying like the cutting edge of 3D graphics and trying to build that into a games engine. I mean, it's part of what makes stuff like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom and Quake so genius, is he was pushing the bounds of what was capable. I mean, this is the guy that on the PC, which was thought to be incapable of this, made a Mario clone for the PC and tried to sell it to Nintendo. Because he could figure out how to make a PC do the scrolling effect in a way that no one thought it could do.
Made it more efficient.
Right. No one thought it could do that.
Masters of Doom, excellent book.
Excellent book.
I did it as an audiobook.
Yeah, excellent. The audiobook is read by
Will Wheaton.
It's excellent.
It's excellent. So you should check into it.
But going back to so couch co-op is still a thing, just not in the AAA space. Because,
no, in fact, they're trying to drive sales by making it not a thing.
Right. They're advertising all this online multiplayer, online co-op, because they figure, and kind of rightly, most gamers are not playing with friends who are close to them. They want to be able to connect to an online match from the comfort of their own home. But I think there's still a space for that, particularly a ridiculous game, like Sports Friends, like Mount Your Friends, like Gang Beasts. I mean, honestly, like what you really do with Tony Hawk, right? You're not really being super competitive with Tony Hawk. You're like, oh, dude, that was sick, bruh.
You're making a fool of yourself, is what you're doing. Making a fool of
yourself. Or like...
also, please never use the word bruh again in this conversation. Ever.
Ever. What I like with Nintendo is Nintendo, for me, makes a lot of basically 3D board games, right, with Mario Party and with Fortune Street. And that's a lot of fun, too. And, Fortune Street's basically Monopoly integrated with a stock market. If you like Monopoly, it takes hours, but it's a beautiful game. So those kind of things exist in that kind of next tier down, in like the Nintendo B-Team stuff and the indie stuff. And it's a really fascinating aspect of the industry right now.
And like we said, you get 4 games
for
in this pack for $15.
And some of them,
it was actually just a Kickstarter thing.
Yep. Each of those games were developed kind of separately, and then they Kickstarted a way to wrap them all together.
Which is smart.
Hokra and Johann Sebastian Joust I find to be of limited utility, but to me, Bari Bari Ball and Super Pole Riders are each worth, I'd almost pay $15 on their own.
Which I'm not familiar with them well enough, but I'm probably going to. We will actually have a rare opportunity where both of us will be in the same place.
Yeah.
So we're going to try this whole thing out.
If I'm really ambitious, maybe we'll live stream it.
Yeah, we'll see how that works.
God. It's a nightmare doing it on the road.
Possibly go wrong.
Yeah. So, kind of thinking...
Sony's deterring my attempts at buying their stupid games.
Yeah, no, it's almost
PlayStation Network.
Well, no, they're down.
Is PlayStation Network currently down?
Yeah, no.
They've gotten back up.
Okay, it was down yesterday.
They were down this weekend.
They were down... Yeah, they certainly were down yesterday. They're DDoS. We'll talk about this actually on the big show. But a distributed denial of service attack, DDoS attack, with 2 different groups claiming credit. One, folks linked to ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria.
Look, these guys are just claiming everything.
They're claiming everything, and then also another hacker has also claimed credit via Twitter. And says if you unload the files, you'll see it was him. And it looks like this doesn't look like the big PSN hack from years ago where they got a lot of personal data.
Yeah, they just overloaded the servers.
They overloaded the servers of this and also Blizzard's thing. Crap, what's it called? What's Blizzard's overall network called? Battle.net. There we go. Or actually, I think it's Battle.net.
Battle.net. You might be right.
Battle.net has also been taken down through this DDoS, which, look, World of Warcraft players need to live, right? Like they got to live. They need to get their characters up to 90 in preparing for the release of the latest game.
Oh, I thought you were saying that they need to live in the real world.
No.
This is really a service to them.
They need to live in the world of Warcraft.
The world of Warcraft.
My favorite part about South Park Stick of Truth is you can find the USB key containing the Sword of 1,000 Truths inside that game. For those of you who don't love that episode, there's a great South Park episode dealing with World of Warcraft where the boys have to save the world of Warcraft, and they save it through the use of the Sword of 1,000 Truths, which was stashed in a desk on a 1 gig flash drive, and that there's a whole thing about how the flash drive gets delivered, and you can find it within the game South Park Stick of Truth. The Sword of 1,000 Truths. I'm going to save the world of Warcraft. Look, I loved that game, and I loved that episode. My brother was huge into WoW for years. And so that was kind of my introduction, and I tell this story all the time, that Drew would hustle me to get home from high school so that he could go raid. People were calling him up on his cell phone, like, where are you? We need to raid. It's like that blew my mind.
What is this?
What is this? What is the world of Warcraft? Like, I was mostly using it as a chat server, right? Like, as a way to have, like, 3D chat with people. Like, that was my experience of the World of Warcraft. But I had very different goals in high school than I do now. I got in a lot of trouble.
Yes, Trey, what goals might that be?
I was trying to find ways to communicate with people in subversive methodologies, and World of Warcraft, kind of rebel World of Warcraft servers were a way to do that. But that's entirely the past. Speaking of the past, I've been playing games from the past as well. Some of which I've really liked, and some of which I really just haven't been able to get into. One of those from the very recent past is Watch Dogs, which was one of my most...
Oh, and I agree with you on that one.
I
could not get into it.
One of my most anticipated games of this year. What do you think? Basically, Assassin's Creed with hacking in modern-day Chicago. Hell yeah. And it is that. Assassin's Creed / GTA with hacking in modern-day Chicago. The hacking mechanic's pretty cool. I think mechanically that game's pretty sound. I want to strangle Aiden Pierce. I want to strangle him.
That is part of the problem.
That's part of the problem, is like his character. They work really hard to craft the assassins, right? And people think they missed with Connor. I liked Connor.
But Connor wasn't like a total miss. Connor was a kind of miss. Like,
it was a kind of miss. He was too earnest for a lot of the gaming community, and I'm earnest, and so like I could look at Connor and go, yeah. And like the stuff on the homestead was like, oh, this is kind of awesome. Like Connor is like setting up a loving relationship.
You love those things though. You're always into the economic part. Yep. No, I mean,
one of the reasons why Assassin's Creed 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, up there with Persona 4 Golden, is because it was basically Sim Castle. The whole Sim City element of it. And of course I love the dating sim element of Persona 4. Next year, Persona 5. Yep.
You're excited about Persona 5.
Persona 4, I had heard of it, and for the first 20 hours I played it, I didn't quite get it, and then I was totally hooked and could barely put it down for the next 67 hours.
And it didn't help that it was on the Vita.
It didn't help that it was on the Vita. And I think that's a wonderful way to play it. That game just grabbed me. That narrative just grabbed me, and those characters sucked me in, and I was off the races, which is one of the reasons why Watch Dogs doesn't grab me. Mechanically, I think it's sound. The shooting isn't great, but it isn't terrible. I like that.
It's the same as the shooting from the other Ubisoft games.
Right.
It's not more or less than I was expecting.
Right. They're not a great third-person shooting company, but it's not awful.
Better than BioShock.
They're certainly better, but that's first-person shooting. But yeah, it's not a great as a shooter. I really enjoy hacking. I enjoy that world. I think I
did the GTA elements of it where I literally just stole a car and drove around.
See, but I don't do that. I deliberately don't ever steal a car. I order a car using my phone every time.
Well, and that's now that I discovered that, I started ordering a car. But either way, I still drive around.
But that narrative is just what is really that game should be about. It's what brings me to games is narrative. I love gameplay, but I only really like for something I'm going to invest 40, 50, 60 hours into. I want gameplay in service of a good narrative. And
right.
Assassin's Creed games are not good narratives, but they're fun and pulpy, and usually Assassin's Creed 4 grabbed me out of nowhere, right? I was like, oh, this is dumb. Oh my god, this is
awesome.
This is awesome. Like, he's carrying Mary and she's dying, and I was like, I don't want to set the body down I was like, just realized I'm really invested. Sorry, spoiler, but like, I'm really invested in this character and in this relationship, and I don't want to set her body down to slay these guards. And like, apparently you could have just left. At some point that game just went, and I went right with it. And maybe I just haven't played enough of Watch Dogs
they're all
yet.
like that. Like, all the Assassin's Creed games, they're all kind of like high. We'll put even to their extent, right? But they're all really like kind of whatever. And then, oh my god, what just happened?
Right, and then you like the last three sequences.
Once you get into it, you can't get out of it.
Oh my god, what?
Because I always start with I know that the second that I start this mission, I'm going to be doing mission. I'm just going to want to go.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm always strategic about when I start that mission.
In 3 weeks, I beat Assassin's Creed 2 Brotherhood and Assassin's Creed 2 Revelations in like a 3-week period. Because it's like 60 hours of gaming. It was like, I got to.
I'm so insane.
I'm just plugged in. I just got to do this. I need to feel. I need it. Like, I just kind of went. And maybe I just haven't got to that point in Watch Dogs, because I'm only through the first act, so maybe something will grab me.
I mean, I'm not that far through it either, but
I'm going to play. I mean, I don't dislike it. I'm not going to stop playing it. Hopefully, my hope is to beat it before Shadows of Mordor come out, because that's my next. So I have strategically games going on each system, because I have 2 systems in one place, and the Xbox One here in Atlanta in the studio. And so that's kind of my game for when I'm here, and then I'm playing other games. I'm playing PS3 and Xbox 360 games in the country. And so So my next big game for the Xbox One is Shadows of Mordor, which isn't coming out until late September.
As opposed to me, where my next game is Destiny.
It's Destiny, which is a week and a half away. We are a week and 2 weeks from Destiny? 2 weeks from Destiny.
It's 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tomorrow.
2 weeks from tomorrow. I don't know. Like that, that game, all the hopes I had for Titanfall have now been transferred to Destiny as being the thing that makes you sit back and go, next gen. Yeah. Next gen. Because Titanfall was close. It was close. The way that game moved was unlike anything. I mean, as a shooter,
it just didn't have story.
It just didn't have enough. It just didn't. They went so far down that multiplayer thing that they lost track of people still want a single player experience. And it looks like Destiny doesn't do that. Destiny has much more of an integrated story, and it seems like a lot more content than Titanfall had.
And that was one of the problems, that Titanfall just didn't have that much content.
No, it just didn't.
It had a great dynamic and a great idea, but it didn't.
Titanfall 2, I think, is going to be a phenomenal game. I had to say the same thing about Watch Dogs 2. I think the sequels, much like the original Call of Duties or the original Assassin's Creed, where the first iteration just wasn't. There was a spark there, but it wasn't great, right? The original Assassin's Creed is a drag. Right.
There's also certain mechanic things that are really weird.
Right.
Like the eagle vision is triangle.
Right. And so there's a whole bunch of
always annoyed me.
Weirdness. And the original few Call of Duties until they got to 4 didn't set the world on fire. I mean, they were good games, but it wasn't until Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare with under Infinity Ward that thing really took off. So I think Titanfall,
that was the big game.
I have hope for Titanfall and Watch Dogs as franchises, and I think they both sold enough that there will be a sequel. and they'll be able to fine tune it. Watch Dogs I think they both just need a better concentration on story. It's like mechanics. Just put the mechanics into the pot and throw in some BS. And that was the story. But I think if they take a step back and go, okay, we've got these solid mechanics. We know how to make this game. We know what this game is. Let's iterate and add in a story that isn't crap. And maybe
but we always want story, and I'm not sure that's necessarily something that everyone's looking for.
But I think Watch Dogs, let's set aside. But I think even people who are looking for more of a multiplayer experience looked at Titanfall and found it wanting in content. Not enough maps, not enough story, not enough things, right? It just didn't seem like there was enough there to justify it being a full $60 game that was supposed to revolutionize next gen. It just didn't do enough. And whether that's story or not enough maps or not enough modes, or whatever, it was a good game, but I think there just wasn't enough there, and that's what it prevented from being a great game. Destiny, on the other hand, looks like a weird integration between like Borderlands, Halo, and an MMO.
Right. It's like to me, it's like a Halo meets the world
of Warcraft. Right. So
that's what it looks like to me.
And to me, that says big world, lot to do. It's still a next-gen shooter made by the folks what made Halo. Right? I mean, this is to me, what was so cool about this year is we see the people who made Call of Duty go up against the people who made Halo in a battle of new IPs. Titanfall being the Call of Duty folks, Bungie, Destiny being the Halo folks. We get to see these teams duke it out in the same way they did at kind of 2007 with Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4.
Right, and those were the two games that we played in my dorm room.
Right, and those are the two franchises that defined shooters for two console generations. Starting with the original Halo on the Xbox, the original Xbox in 2001, through, let's call it Call of Duty Black Ops 2, if we want to look at the bookends of that period of generation of shooters. Because now
Black Ops 2,
Black Ops,
such a good game.
Black Ops 2 to me, not as a Call of Duty player, but as an observer of what people say about Call of Duty, seems to be the apex of what Call of Duty was. And it's all been kind of...
Well, that's the one that had a real Metacritic score. Had a real 93, 94 Metacritic.
Yeah. And from there, the previous game and Advanced War doesn't look bad. It looks interesting. Best use of Eminem in a trailer this year. It looks great, but it's not going to set the world on fire in the way that I think Bungie with Destiny will.
Right.
Destiny is, kind of a big play of what's going to come next. If Activision does this thing where they latch onto a series, beat it to death, you bring up Tony Hawk. They did this with Tony Hawk.
Oh, yeah, they released so many iterations of Tony Hawk.
And then it just died. And then they did the same thing with Guitar Hero. And then they did the same thing with Call of Duty. And they make billions of dollars doing this. And so I think they see Destiny as that next thing. In their announcement, they said this is a 10-year franchise. So I want to see what this 10-year franchise looks like. I'm really excited about it.
And how they keep it fresh.
And And
that's going to be the real challenge for them.
Yeah. I think with it having that MMO element, it has a chance to be an evolving world. Right? So World of Warcraft, perfect example. They have Heroes of Draenor, they have a whole new expansion coming. They've kept millions of people playing that game for 10 years now. Because you can evolve, you get attached to an MMO world, and then you can evolve the world. So you're not starting from scratch. It's not I'm going to start with this new game and build this new world. You're evolving a character and a world that you're already attached to. And I think that has a great amount of potential. Here's hoping. I want something, whether it's this or Shadows of Mordor, or I want something to prove that next gen was worth the investment.
That was worth the significant outlaying of cash.
Well, people are buying these systems. There was clearly a pent-up demand for systems. They've sold 10 million PlayStations and 5 million Xboxes, and both of those are selling faster than their previous iterations. So clearly there's demand in a marketplace. And people are wondering, oh, it's console gaming dead? No, not dead. Changing. It's not going to have the sales numbers this time. It's not going to have the sales numbers this time because there isn't the Wii. The Wii sold 100 million units to people who never played games. That trick doesn't work twice.
As Nintendo is discovering.
Right. I mean, the Wii U, great. We talked about this many times. Wii U, great system, great games, not selling worth crap. They've already sold more Xbox Ones and twice as many PS4s as Wii U's, and the Wii U has been on the market for almost 2 years now. Like, I have one, and it gets a ton of use. I don't regret purchasing it. Kind of regret purchasing a Vita, because there's no games for it that I want to play. It's an indie box, and I get that, and that's valuable. And I'm actually about to play an indie game on it. I'm about to play Counter-Spy. But anyways, so what else am I playing? Oh, Heavy Rain. Let's talk about Heavy Rain.
Yes.
Let's talk about Heavy Rain, and then I'll get out of here. So
Tell me about Heavy Rain, Trey.
So Heavy Rain is a game made by Studio Quantic Dream, who also made Beyond Two Souls, the video game with Ellen Page and William Dafoe from last year. They released this in 2010, a while back, for the PS3.
It's kind of the precursor to Beyond Two Souls.
Well, I mean,
my understanding is that the stories are in the same world, if not actually related.
I don't know about that. They certainly use the same mechanics. They make these games. They started making. There was another one called Indigo Prophecy that came up for the PS2. They make these games that are somewhat like interactive adventures, less than traditional video games. So it's
interactive movies almost.
Interactive movies. It's very focused on very difficult QuickTime events where you have to like hold down different buttons and shake the controller and press up and hold this. I mean, there's some difficulty there. It is people. It's not a game. It's a game. It's a game. It's a game. Even more so, it's more gamey than Gone Home because there's like a purpose and a fail state. And, characters can die. And so it's much more of a traditional game than even Gone Home was from last year.
Well, and Gone Home really isn't a traditional game, but...
Well, it's a point-and-click adventure with low stakes, right? So what's great about Gone Home is every video game ever is like, the state of the world is in the balance, or these people can all die. And, like, Gone Home is like, oh my god, my sister may have killed herself. Right, and that's like the core, like, conflict in Gone Home is very real and something that could happen in real life. It is unlikely that so for instance in Heavy Rain, you mostly play as this guy who thinks he's also a psycho killer who has kidnapped his son, and so he has to go through these tasks to find his son because he thinks his other self has taken his son. In reality, spoiler alert, it's been 4 years. It's not. He's not the killer. But the game tells you this. Like, he's not the killer. And you also play, like, the police who are looking for him, and a journalist who's trying to protect him, and a private eye who's also who's on the trail of the killer. It's a good game. But it is too horrific for me. I don't like horror movies. I don't like horror games. I don't like survival horror as a genre. There is a scene where I had to cut off my own finger. I had to go around the apartment and find elements to cut off my finger, and then I had to hold a button and shake the PS3 controller as my character screams so that I could cut off my finger. I mostly play video games relatively late at night. That's when I have off hours. And I don't like horror films. And, like, this is a super engaging narrative. It sucks me in like no other game. Like, usually, like, I'm listening to podcasts or listening to audiobook when I'm going through all but, like, the really intense story parts. Like, I have to turn everything else off and just focus on Heavy Rain because it is this interactive movie. It really grabs you. The voice acting's a little meh, but it really grabs you. I mean, but
that's something that theoretically should be fixed in Beyond Two Souls.
It is.
Maybe Beyond Two Souls is really the game you want to play.
And I think it looks like it's a lot less survival horror and more like a traditional thriller. So I don't know. Sydney keeps telling me I'm not going to finish Heavy Rain. I might. I'm about 2/3 the way through it. It's not like I haven't given it its fair shakes. But, like, I cut off my bloody...
You're more likely to finish it than Watch Dogs at this point.
Well, I will finish both of them. very seldom do I not finish a game that I buy. I think of the games I bought last year, the only one I didn't finish eventually was Splinter Cell. And that wasn't a bad game. It just, again, mechanically, it didn't draw me. So I very seldom do I not finish games that I buy. Games that I rent from GameFly, sometimes I'll play it. Like, that's kind of like, maybe I'll play it, maybe I won't. Sometimes I get sucked in, like Tearaway, Tearaway, best game for the Vita from last year. I finished it this weekend, too. It's great. Beautiful. Gameplay, it uses a lot of the Vita features. It's coming to PS4. Maybe wait till it comes to PS4. Because why buy a Vita? Unless you're big into the indie game scene.
Why spend $200 on a Vita?
Like, I have this Vita that I'm like what, I'm playing Tearaway. I'm going to play Counter Spy on it. Counter Spy is also available for consoles. It's just, I'm going to have to be doing a lot of traveling here in a little bit, and Vita games intrigue me, but I don't know.
It seems like a good use of the thing that you spent money on.
Right. And I keep thinking, at some point I'll have a PS4 and want to do crossplay, but that's like a tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow thing. So on that note, we should probably get out of here. Thank you so much for joining us for T4, Techies Talking Tech tonight. If you have any feedback for us, podcast at techstlastcall.com, facebook.com/techstlastcall, pinterest.com/techstlastcall, or at techstlastcall on the Twitters. Good night. Epic music.
I know, it's so great.
I feel like I'm on a journey